What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode, I believe this is 8 of my Amiibo Customizer Showcase. A little different than the normal. I'm going to go and do an interview again on this one. I am interviewing, is it Ryan or Brian? Because your Twitter handle says one thing, and it says two things, actually, and it always
Yeah,
confuses me, and I'm like, man, am I calling him the wrong name? I hope I'm not, so.
it's Ryan Benno. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
Brian Reno is an inside joke with a bunch of
okay.
friends. So
I
let's
figured.
also
I
just kind
figured as much. It had
yeah.
to be.
But yeah,
So,
I get that a lot too. It's like people are like, "Oh, this is Brian." I'm like, "No, no." But like that's my bad though. So
no, it's fine.
yeah,
So I'm speaking to Ryan Benno, Boulevard Nights, as most of you guys would know him as. He has an Etsy shop. He has Instagram account. That's how I found you. I found you on Instagram the first time,
hmm
and so he does these unique custom amiibo in the terms of, and the reason why they're unique is they're not like a Gonda Chris, they're not like an Amiglo, they're not like anything that you see most customizers doing. These are 3D printed, and that's the first thing that I wanted to ask, because I have questions just in terms of like how some of this stuff gets done. Like, so you're modeling all this stuff on the computer, correct?
hmm yeah. And
Okay.
so yeah, all of the figures that I have are 3D printed, but also because I have like I'm a professional 3D artist, and
Mhm.
so it made sense that I was like, oh, this would be kind of a neat thing to do. And it just so happened that like at the same time I was trying to think about, okay, what could I make to do 3D printed stuff? I kind of actually got into Amiibos, and so
Mhm.
that's kind of where those things kind of came together. And I started seeing people like Gonda Chris who was doing some really fantastic customs. I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's really neat. Um, at the same time, I'm also a massive Earthbound nerd.
Yeah.
Um, and this might be a little bit of a long-winded story, but the whole
No, that's fine.
genesis of really this whole thing coming together was that as a kid, I always wanted Earthbound figures. So this was like probably a year or two after the game had been released.
And
And
unfortunately, you didn't live in Japan, where Japan gets all this stuff, and we don't get nothing.
yeah, exactly.
We
And
get the
like in the
game,
90s
and
too,
yeah,
like we didn't have any game merchandise really,
yeah.
unless you like somehow were able to get like a Mario figure that was imported in
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. It's like for me, it's like I had to go into LA and find like a Japanese store, which were way more uncommon back then to find that type
Yeah,
of stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, so as a kid, I was like, man, it's like I really want like a Ness, I want a Jeff, I want a Paula and a Pooh,
mm-hmm.
and so that genesis kind of came into that, and so the whole reason why I even started collecting amiibos was the fact that there was a Ness, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, a Ness, this would be really cool, and then I was like, you know what, it'd be neat if like I was able to have the other kids, but I know there's no way they're going to be able to
yeah,
ever make those.
yeah.
Nintendo basically doesn't even
You,
acknowledge the Mother
you,
series.
yeah. You knew in your mind you were lucky as hell to get a Nest figure as it was, let
hmm
alone a Lucas that was going to come in the future. But the idea of like a Jeff and a Paul, like, forget it. That's never going to happen. I'm
Yeah.
right there with you. Yeah.
So,
That's why. I'm sorry to cut you off.
oh
That's
no, no.
why when I saw the Jeff the first time, I freaked out. Like the minute I saw that, I'd never forget. I was out to dinner with my wife, and she was still looking through the menu, and I was flipping through Instagram, and I saw it for the first time, and I was like, "Holy crap! Does this dude have an Etsy shop or whatever?" And then it was right before Christmas, and I was like, "You got to get me these. This is what I want for Christmas." And so go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. It was like I did Jeff as my first test to
Mm-hmm.
actually get like the general pipeline down of like, okay, is this something that I'd be interested in even doing? And really, originally, it was like I was just gonna make it for myself
Mm-hmm.
as like a thing. It was like, oh well, it's like I could probably make one for myself, and
Yeah.
that'll be fine. And originally I was actually going to just hand paint it, and then luckily I found out that the service that I use for a lot of 3D printing, Shapeways, has color as
God, that's
well. And
awesome.
so I did a couple tests just to kind of see, and like I had some friends also who have their own 3D printers because they're if you want a quality one, they're relatively expensive. So I
Mm-hmm.
did a number of tests for maybe about a month or so,
Gotcha.
and then the first color one came in, and besides some adjustments to the actual coloring, I was really impressed with just like the quality of it that came out, particularly with Jeff.
Yeah.
And Jeff is still probably the best figure that he's at least my favorite that like I've made so far.
Yeah,
Just
I can agree with that. I can agree.
It's like the pose is really good.
I like Pooh's
He's
pose.
solid.
I like Pooh's pose, but he's just a little basic looking. Like in terms of like, there's no pop, there's no color to him.
No.
And Paul is just cool because of the bear and all that stuff. But Jeff definitely he stands out. That's the one that's just like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah. And so I found out that people really liked it, and I was like, well, maybe I could like make a couple of these. But yeah, it's been a fun. It's been a fun little side thing for me to do, and like I've met a lot of really interesting people, and like I've been able to kind of branch out a little bit more, and I've made some other Pokemon figures that have gone over pretty well with a lot of people. It's like I did the trainers. I started making custom bases to go along with it, mainly because the original bases, as like you like originally saw, is that I have to use whatever existing bases Nintendo has originally made, and so that comes with holes for like where the character's feet or whatever they have support. And so I was like, man, it just doesn't look good, and like the process to actually clean all that up would just be way too much work. And I was like, I'm just gonna make my own.
Yeah,
and like,
and I actually did that. I did it because I did the video this week, and I actually stressed it. Like, if you're going to buy these custom amiibo, spend the extra money and get the custom base, because above and beyond, like. Because I said it to you when I originally got them, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I understood it, but I was just like, man, that stinks. Like, I really didn't think it was going to be that noticeable. So that's when I had gone back to you, and I was like, hey, can we do the custom bases? And you were like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Now, can you, when you're doing the custom bases, though, can you scan in? Because these ones that I got don't scan. They're just plain Jane. Are you making them where the ability so people can still scan those in, or is that out of the question?
Oh no, they can totally scan, and like that. That was something that I was like, it was part of like my initiative when making those custom bases. Was like, I want to make them scan in. And so the first ones that I actually made were the Pokemon ones, and every time that I get a custom order for one, I'll I'll rip open the like original base, take out the chip that's in there, put it into the new one, and test it each time. And 100% so far they've been.
That's awesome. And the nice thing about the Pokemon trainers is you could actually make it any Pokemon, because you could just act like, hey, the trainer just has this one. I mean, I know in the actual custom amiibo, it's basically Pikachu at his feet, but doesn't he have? Don't they have balls in their hands?
They do, yeah.
So you could actually be like, hey, the Pokemon is actually in the ball. It's not the Pikachu. So that's kind of cool. I like that idea. The problem with the Earthbound ones is there's no characters. I cut that out of my video because it got a little long-winded. But I said that. I was like, I tried it first. They didn't scan. And I was like, but I didn't even discuss scanning in. I said, but not only that, like, what are they going to scan in as? It's just stupid anyway. It makes no sense. So I'm fine. I was absolutely fine with, them not scanning, because I don't use them anyway. I don't use any Amiibo anyway. Occasionally I'll use the Fire Emblem ones just because I think that's a good, or the Splatoon ones I'll occasionally use. But for the most part, like, I don't. They're in the cases. They stay there, and that's it. What? So you said you're a big Earthbound geek. Like, when was the first time you were introduced to Earthbound? When did that all come about?
I got it as a Christmas gift. This was probably 95 or 96. Okay. So it was around the time the game came out, and like it's like my parents got it because it was this kind of ridiculous looking box. Like anybody that has seen that original thing is like, it's huge. Yeah. It was the first video game like that I ever saw that did not come in a traditional box.
Yes.
In like any sort of way, because it had the strategy guide that was in it. So that's how I got introduced to that. And actually, I played it for a little bit, maybe when I first got it. Wasn't totally into it until a couple of months later, because at the same time I also got Chrono Trigger, and that was kind of the first RPG that I really kind of got into. Gotcha. And I was able to wrap my mind around, okay, this is how these games play, because up to that point I'd really only played adventure games on the PC, and then a ton of side scrollers, because that was really kind of what was there at the time, and that was what was really popular. So once I got my head around that, I started playing Earthbound, and like it was just kind of like it's even hard for me to describe now because I've analyzed that game so much. I've gone back and played it so much, but there is a sense of like familiarity to it that is idyllic for a kid of like that age. It's like, oh, hey, I grew up in a relatively small suburban town, so I was like, oh, a lot of these things I kind of remember. It's like, this kind of reminds you of my house in some ways too. So it was kind of this nice familiarity that you could kind of put yourself into as a kid. As I've gotten older, the game has actually, it's one of the few games that have held up really well, and in some ways have probably have aged really, really well, particularly because the writing in it is so strong. Yeah. It's so strong even for games today. It's it's still really funny.
It's for me, and I say this all the time. Like when I'm the same way, except for the difference was between me and you was when I put it down, I never went back to it. So it wasn't until they put it out on the virtual console that I kind of that guilt, because it always in the back of my mind, it always struck me like, man, why did I walk away from this? Why did I not keep playing this game? And then when I went back to it on the virtual console, I was like, I'm going to play this. I'm going to beat this. And thank God I did. Like, because it is such a powerful story and so good. And there's little metaphors within, and you don't like stuff you don't necessarily get as a kid. And I think that's necessarily why a lot of it, like the stuff that spoke to me was like, I'm a kid, in the game. And it's not Final Fantasy where I'm this warrior it's stuff that could happen minus the aliens, but it's stuff that you did as a kid. Like you and your friends ran off into the woods and, played adventures and stuff like that. So we didn't have, like we had video games and stuff, but it wasn't like we weren't allowed to like stay all day on the video game or the computer or anything like that. Like it was like, okay, go outside, go play outside, and so that part of it always stuck to me. And that was where, for myself too, like that spoke to me. So yeah, it's now, did you get into Mother 3 at all or no?
So I only got into Mother 3 last year for the first time. And there was a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, because I work in the game industry, it's always kind of weird for me to do any sort of like emulation of any kind, just from a moral standpoint. It's like, it's kind of weird and everything. But knowing just how long that game had, like it was around the time like I started doing the Amiibos, and people are like, "You gonna do Mother 3? You gonna do Mother 3?" And like I was like, I have no association with Mother 3 at all. But maybe it's about time that I actually play this and give it a go. And knowing that, it's been, now like it's been over a decade since that game has been out. At this point, I was like, all right, I'll see what I can do. I found an actual cartridge at least that someone had modded, put an emulation, so like I bought that. And
that's what I did. I bought the modded cart, the Game Boy Advance cart. I play it on my DS. I haven't finished it. I'm about a quarter of the way in, about halfway in. But actually, what I did to make myself feel guilt free, I actually bought Earthbound again on the virtual console upstairs, just so I felt guilt free. And then I even bought it again on the 3DS, just so I was like, I've given Nintendo my money. That's, what I mean? Like I could. Clean conscience here, and that game's even more powerful of a story, I feel, than Earthbound. Like it, from the word go, just immediately starts tugging at your heart, man. It's like, holy crap, this game is powerful.
The first half of that game is so focused.
Oh yeah,
that's what's really good about it, is like it's focus, and again, like the writing, and a lot of that has to go, especially on like the English side, you have to go with the Tomato Clyde Mandolin did the fan translation, but like it's man, like it's still probably one of the funniest games like I've ever played. And like it really kind of, a lot of these games you play, and I've personally fallen out of love with Japanese RPGs over the last handful of years.
It changed.
Well, I've changed, I think.
Well, that too. That could be too.
But like that game to me is like, it's like, oh hey, it's like if you grew up playing those games and you've fallen out of love with them, play Mother 3, because it is so good. Yes, it's so smart too. Some of the combat's a little, it's fine. But like the writing's really good, the pacing's really good.
What I'm hoping
and like, it has a lot of really good ideas in it.
I'm hoping they just bring it to the virtual console. It's kind of why I stopped playing, because I was like, I just want to play this, legit kind of, because I'm playing it on a DS, and it's small. Like the screen is really super small. So I'm like, man, I just hope they port it somewhere where I can just play it with a little bit bigger screen. Like it's legitimately like, I think like an inch and a half by an inch and a half. Like it's a small screen on that DS.